The rain hammered against the Packard's roof, blurring the already indistinct outline of the Blackwood estate. Silas gripped the wheel tighter, his knuckles white against the worn leather. Elias sat beside him, staring out at the storm-lashed grounds, a strange, detached look in his eyes. He hadn't spoken much since their confrontation with the caretaker in the circular chamber. "He seemed certain," Elias murmured, his voice barely audible above the drumming rain. "Caretakers often are," Silas replied, though his tone lacked conviction. The caretaker's certainty hadn't stemmed from simple conviction. It had radiated a disturbing, almost feverish intensity that had left Silas deeply unnerved. He kept glancing at Elias. The faint ethereal glow that clung to him seemed more pronounced in the dim light of the car, and the subtle shifts in his features, the elongation of his jawline, the unsettling intensity of his gaze, were a constant source of worry. "What do you think he meant by delayed the inevitable?" Elias continued, tracing patterns on the condensation forming on the window. Silas hesitated. "I don't know. I suspect he's mad, Elias. Truly mad. We need to put as much distance between us and Blackwood as possible." He pushed the accelerator, the Packard surging forward, the tires spitting gravel as it left the estate grounds behind. But the feeling of escape was fleeting. A growing unease settled over Silas. The road ahead seemed to twist and distort, the familiar landscape morphing into something alien and unsettling. "Where are we?" Elias asked, his voice tight with a growing fear. He pointed to a signpost that had materialized seemingly from nowhere. It bore a name Silas had never seen before: Oakhaven. "I don't know," Silas stammered, his gaze darting across the unfamiliar surroundings. The rain had stopped abruptly, and the clouds parted to reveal the sky choked with an unnatural, sickly green light. The trees that lined the road were gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. As they drove deeper into Oakhaven, the houses that appeared along the road became increasingly dilapidated. Their windows were boarded up, their gardens overgrown, and a palpable sense of desolation hung in the air. Silas noticed that every house bore the same peculiar emblem, a stylized oak leaf encircled by thorns. He spotted a figure standing on a porch across the road, a woman dressed in what appeared to be a Victorian-era gown. She stared directly at them, her eyes dark and hollow. As Silas met her gaze, he felt a jolt of icy dread run through him. Her expression, it wasn't one of curiosity or concern. It was a look of knowing, of expectation. Suddenly, the Packard sputtered and died, the engine groaning to a halt. Silas wrestled with the ignition, but the engine remained stubbornly silent. "What's wrong?" Elias asked, his voice laced with anxiety. "I don't know. Something's blocking the fuel line," Silas replied, frustration creeping into his voice. He got out of the car, intending to examine the engine. As he did so, he noticed a group of people emerging from the houses along the road. They were all dressed in antiquated clothing, their faces grim and unreadable. Each held a lantern casting an eerie glow. "We need to go," Elias said urgently. He stared at the approaching crowd. "Something isn't right about this place." Silas reluctantly agreed. He quickly got back into the Packard and tried to restart the engine, but to no avail. The crowd closed in, surrounding the car. A man, seemingly their leader, stepped forward. He was tall and gaunt, with piercing eyes that seemed to bore into Silas's soul. "Welcome to Oakhaven," the man said, his voice low and resonant. "We've been expecting you." "Who are you?" Silas demanded, his hand instinctively reaching for the revolver tucked into his coat. "We are the guardians of Oakhaven," the man replied. "And you, Silas, are the key to the awakening." "What do you mean?" The man smiled, a slow, unsettling curve of his lips. "The harmony is not merely a place, you see. It is a state of mind, a corruption, and it spreads, like a disease. Your friend, Elias, is a conduit, a vessel for its return." He gestured to Elias, who seemed to be in a trance, his eyes glowing with an unnatural luminescence. "Leave him alone," Silas shouted, pulling the revolver from his coat and aiming it at the man. The man didn't flinch. Instead, he raised his hand, and the crowd stepped back, their faces impassive. "You cannot stop what is destined to be," he said, his voice taking on an almost mocking tone. "The awakening is upon us, and your friend is about to fulfill his purpose." Suddenly, a chorus of voices echoed through the street, rising and falling in an unsettling, almost hypnotic rhythm. The lanterns, held by the crowd, flared with an intense green light, bathing the street in an otherworldly glow. Silas felt a searing pain in his head, a pressure building behind his eyes. He looked down at his hands and saw that they were trembling violently. He glanced at Elias. The young man was no longer looking at him. Instead, his gaze was fixed on something beyond Silas's perception. A smile spread across his face, a smile that was utterly devoid of warmth or humanity. "Join us, Silas," Elias whispered, his voice strangely distorted. "Embrace the harmony." The world around Silas began to dissolve, the street, the houses, the crowd all merging into a swirling vortex of green light and chanting voices. He felt himself being pulled into the vortex, the sense of self disintegrating. Then, just as abruptly as it had begun, the swirling stopped. Silas found himself standing in a vast, circular chamber. The walls were lined with portraits, their eyes following him as he moved. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, upon which rested a single object, a shattered music box. Elias stood beside him, his face serene, his eyes glowing with an ethereal light. "Welcome home, Silas," Elias said, extending a hand towards him. "Join me. Let us complete the harmony." Silas stared at his outstretched hand, a deep sense of dread filling his heart. He knew with absolute certainty that he was standing on the precipice of something terrible. But as he looked into Elias's eyes, he saw something else too, a flicker of doubt, a whisper of regret. And in that moment, Silas knew that he had to make a choice that would determine not only his own fate, but the fate of the world.